Thanks for joining me today. My guest is Ashley Fullmer, and we're here to talk about mental health in the workplace. Ashley's worked in corporate America for 14 years, tech corporate specifically, and she's here to talk about her journey from a really happy place at a job for a decade and then wanting to get out on her own and do something different, and how she was able to cope with some of the difficulties that happened during that time for her. So thank you for being here, Ashley.
Thanks for having me, Lisa. I'm flattered.
Yes, thanks for being here. I wanted to talk about it with you because you and I have talked about this. You and I have been friends for many, many years. Our moms worked together back in the day. So since we were kids, and we've talked about this journey you've been on for the last several months. And it wasn't until I saw your social media post where you opened up about these difficulties you were having in a corporate setting. And I thought one of the reasons I wanted to have you here is people assume because you work remotely that maybe how do you have conflict in the workplace when you're not actually physically in the workplace? So that was an interesting concept that I wanted to talk about here today because so many people can relate to it. But let's just back up a little and talk about your work experience and where you started from and kind of how you ended up this far, because you've been very successful ever since leaving college. You've had, positions that you strived for and achieved great things in.
Yeah, thank you for that. And thanks for the introduction. So yeah, as you mentioned, I've been in tech corporate for quite a while now and have, learned the ropes. And you're right, in my first 10 years of experience, I really learned a lot. I had the backbone, I had a great community of team members that I still call friends today. And if I need someone to lean on, they're there for me. And that was an in-person experience. You were in conference rooms, you were buddied up, you had the water cooler conversations, you were walking through the hallways and chatting with people. And that was the way it was. And then fast forward to the last few years, I'm in a new environment and still within the same.
You chose to leave the job you had for 10 years. You just wanted to change. You've
Absolutely.
gotten all you could from that.
10 years of amazing learning and development and wearing multiple hats across recruiting operations and program management, also merger and acquisitions. And so thankful to have traveled the world and seen so much culture. It really was a great learning and growing experience in my 20s. After 10 years, though, you become stagnant. You become thirsty for new opportunities and taking your industry experience and transitioning somewhere else. So I did that. And one of the main reasons why I left was in that environment, I felt somewhat restricted from a humanitarian people empathy perspective. And so when I transitioned into my next career, I got all of those things. I got the empathy, I got the warm welcome, I got that humanitarian, I got the people-centric concept in comparison where it was more delivery and results. But through the learning of being at that company, it almost became too people-centric, where being liked was the dependency. You had to be liked in order to succeed. And so I've learned I want both of those things, but in a more healthy balance. So the second job that we're talking about, I was fully remote. Once we hit the pandemic, but prior to that, I actually went into the office, I traveled, I had that interpersonal connection. And then going remote, we went through things like reorgs, management changes. And so you're going through constant change and having to be agile, but you're learning to work on a screen. And at this company, you're always on camera, always video, watching your face, watching your body language, watching their body language, watching their face. And being on all the time really forces you to bring in that extrovert skill set. And we all know that there's introversion. People might feel more comfortable off camera. People might feel more comfortable writing. And so it really played into those strengths. If you had them, if you didn't have them, you had to teach yourself to learn them, right? You had to teach yourself to be on.
And so do you feel like the skill set of teaching yourself to be on, obviously you learn many skill sets through whatever job you've had. And so while that is a skill set you could achieve, how did that affect your mental health? How did that affect your kind of waking up every day going, okay, I have to be on? Because I think about that even just in simplicity, like my radio show compared to my television show. A lot less pressure for people to just be talking to me through a telephone than it is to have to be on camera and figure out the lighting and what am I wearing and, that type of thing. So What was it about facing your day that was so hard? And how did you face the day when that became something that you were dreading, really?
It became taxing. It was exhausting. Every day was waking up with, to be honest, a little bit of dread and a lot of anxiety. How many meetings do I have on my calendar today? When am I going to eat lunch? When am I going to take a break for myself? When you're in back to backs and you're on all day long, you kind of lose a little bit of just your day to day and your normalcy. My eating plan became unscheduled. Getting outside was almost a chore. It rarely happened. I was working sometimes up to 14 to 16-hour days, and I just lost myself. I lost my self worth. I lost my person outside of work. I just became this whole work entity. It consumed me.
Well, let me ask
And
you this. Do you think that when you worked this job because you weren't remote at first, do you think that there are more meetings because it's remote? Don't you think that
interesting.
some of this could be handled, some of it's just a conversation you have by the water cooler and
Mhm,
then maybe a follow-up email and you're done. But now we meet,
mhm.
we meet, we meet. There's all these meetings.
I truly miss the debrief. After you're having a conversation and you have these trailing thoughts and you're able to walk outside the room with somebody and you kind of continue the conversation, or you're able to get a read of what did you think about that call? Should we have landed there? And you kind of just circle back and you bring it all together. I was missing that because once a meeting started and once a meeting ended, you were just on to the next, on to the next. And so, first of all, you lose kind of any work time because there's no time to do actions in between, but you're also missing that connection with people, and so you're having to jump right into the work and move on to the next. And so while it's very productive to work from home, there's a lot of huge benefits, but it's finding that balance between the water cooler, the debrief, and just making sure that everybody's in alignment of what's going on, because you don't have that cohesion in a remote environment always.
Well, let's take a break. When we come back, I wanted to just kind of set the scene for what you were encountering and how that was difficult for you. And then the decision that you made to not right away leave that position, but to take a break, see a doctor, get some help, and decide from there what your next move would be. So we're talking with Ashley Fullmer. We'll be back in just a moment. We're back talking with Ashley Fullmer. We're talking about her experience with corporate America, going from from in-person work to remote work, and how that affected her mental health and the steps, Ashley, that you took to take care of yourself. So you've worked, as we said, you were in a corporate job for 10 years that you really enjoyed. You were ready to move forward. You went to work in another corporate tech position, started out in person, then went remote when a lot of the people did, and you chose to stay on remotely. You had the option to go back into the office, and you faced a lot of challenges in terms of just your mental health and having to be on all the time and meetings after meetings, working more hours than usual, not getting outside. A lot of people who are watching can relate to this, who work remotely. And you had to kind of put on the brakes and decide, I need a literal break from this. And tell us about that, because a lot of people might not have taken that time for themselves because maybe they didn't even know how to go about it in a corporate setting.
Yeah, and I think another factor that was really vital and important to this is, in addition to the change that we just talked about and working remote and learning how to be on all the time, there was also just differences in the people component, right? Did my values and morals line up with our leadership team and our vision and where we were going? And so all of these things combined was really what triggered me to hold the brakes or pump the brakes and figure out what I needed to do. And throughout all of this, the most important thing was I was my sole advocate. I was really focused on staying in control and staying in front of it. And so after trying to exhaust resources that were available to me, whether it be employment law, human resources, or employee relations, I then needed to course correct and do something different. So because my three pillars, my physical, mental, and emotional pillars of my life were broken, I decided to take a medical mental health leave. And I first thought I needed 3 weeks. And then I quickly realized that was not enough time. I extended it and I ended up taking 3 months. And throughout that 3 month process, I leveraged outside resources that were available to me. Very lucky to work for a company that does consider mental health awareness and mental health care very important. And so I went to the doctor. I saw a therapist. I got on medication. And these are all things that I'm not embarrassed about. I really want to change the taboo nature of mental health. And I feel that we're very lucky that in the last 5 to 7, maybe 10 years, we've really made a lot of progress around mental health advocacy. I was very lucky to have a great doctor, and I love the way that he put it. He said, "You have a 75-pound weight on your back that no one else can see, but you feel it every day." I have a therapist that walked me through the balance of a work life and a personal life and how to set up boundaries and know your capacity and taking care of yourself. And then medication. I found the right balance, and all three of those things combined, as well as just time. Time is the most valuable gift, Lisa. Like when you have time to just heal, understand your self worth, know what's of value to you, and really put those things all into perspective, that gave me the toolkit to move forward. I'm so thankful for those 3 months. And during that process, I realized this is not the right home for me. I need to go back to my roots. I need to find that work culture that values um, belonging and driving towards results and just getting stuff done, but with that lens of innovation, with that lens of thinking big, delivering and showcasing your work and having your likability be second. And luckily, I found that, and I feel I'm in a much better place for myself that's bringing in those strengths. You know, I feel heard, I feel valued, I feel trusted. People look at me as a domain expert, and they're wanting more of it. They want me to bring in my external perspective. They want me to drive towards those results. So I'm really happy with how things ended up. It could have ended up a lot different, but luckily, in all of those things I explained, it brought me to where I am today.
And you did the work, and that's what's important. And also just trying to, you could have hit roadblocks along the way, and I'm sure you did, and just had to keep pushing forward. And then talk about the podcast. You and I have talked about this off camera, but talk about the podcast that made a difference for you too, because a lot of people
Yes.
listening listen to podcasts too.
Yes. So, kind of an undertone of what I'm talking about is the purpose, like being mindful, being present, and really what is your purpose. So, I kind of came to this realization later in my mental health leave, more towards the end, where I was practicing my toolkit and putting all of these things into place. On Purpose with Jay Shetty. He is incredible. And I started listening to him at a really vital point. It was before I went on leave, but the timing of when I started listening to him and the messages that I was receiving to him really helped put things in motion. Jay does an amazing job of talking about mindfulness. He talks about self worth. He talks in a solution oriented tone, meditation, deep breathing, surrounding yourself with things that bring you joy. And so those were the things that I latched into. And because Jay Shetty talks about on purpose, doing things with purpose, I kind of walked away out of my mental health. I was starting to have conversations with people in my industry. People came out of the woodworks. They were sharing their stories with me. They were relating to me. They were unfortunately experiencing the same things around toxicity and a negative culture that I was experiencing. And I had no idea that this was happening. So it gave me this kind of wake up call of, what's my purpose, right? We're all here. What are we here for? What can we do to give back to others? And so I started thinking, maybe this is my purpose. Maybe it's my purpose to talk about mental health, to talk about my journey, to relate to others. If somebody watching this takes one piece away from it and it helps them, or they're at a place in their life where they need to hear this, that's what I'm hoping, right? I want to display advocacy. I want to show up as an ally because, again, as I mentioned earlier, throughout all of this, I was my sole advocate. I was educating my parents. I was educating my friends. I was explaining all the ins and outs of mental health because some people didn't understand. And so I want to bring that education and that learning and growth into others as a helpful aid.
I think that anytime we have an experience that we can share that helps spare someone else the learn as you go, that
Yeah.
they might have to go through. I feel that way very strongly about the healthcare advocacy that I do. I wouldn't want anyone to have to go through the things that I've been through to learn and navigate that, in a way that's a lot more seamless, hopefully. And I think that this is no different. I think that I'm a big believer in storytelling. And I think when we're willing to share our story, and if it helps somebody else better live their own, then that's a thing that you can look back at this and say, well, Okay, I've learned from it. Other people are learning from it. It was worth it. Do you feel it was worth it?
Yeah,
Mhm.
I do. I felt like it was meant to happen. And I will be open and transparent. I have been a very analytical and anxious person all of my life. And I just figured that's how everyone operated. That's how everyone's brains worked. And they worried and they overthought and they stayed up at night because they were thinking about all the things they did wrong that day. And that's not the case. Not everyone thinks that way. And so actually
Or
being
to that degree, right?
completely.
Mhm.
Yes. I mean, we all can probably feel like we messed up during the day and we think about it and we're, oh, we wish we would have done that differently. But there's different altitudes of how much stress that brings you and how much hyper focus it gives you, right? So while I'm prideful about being high functioning, I was trying to look for some reprieve from the extra worry. In hindsight, I feel like it would have been helpful to identify this early, but to answer your question, the fact that I identified it at all and the way that it worked out and the way that I was able to course correct and again stay in control and leverage resources and being open, so happy to where I am today. I do feel like everything happens for a reason and we learn and grow because of it. And just, yeah, thankful for the experience. Practicing gratitude, right? That's another value. So, yeah, I definitely think it was meant to happen and it served the right purpose.
And now you've been a couple months at your new position. And I'd imagine with your experience over the years, you already know it's a good fit. You already feel better. I see a lightness to you that I hadn't seen over the months. So I'm happy for you in that.
Mhm.
And what is your message then to people who feel like they wouldn't even know where to begin, whether it's corporate America or another setting? I mean, we can't control others. We can only really take responsibility for ourselves.
Yeah, accountability is huge, right? So often we blame others or, think it's somebody else's issue. The best piece of advice I can say is take action, take control, really trust your gut and pay attention to your feelings, your thoughts, and the surroundings. Are you surrounded by the right things and people? And if not, you can make those changes, right? I like to say, surround your life with things that bring you joy, kind of like the Marie Kondo of things. It's the
Yes.
Marie Kondo of people. You
Yes.
can purge people. People serve a true benefit, whether they're meant to be lifelong friends or whether they're meant to come into your life for 6 weeks or 6 months. There's a purpose for that. There's a reason why you were brought together, and whether it be short, long, or in between. So I would say take action, pay attention, do the work. It is hard, it's awkward. Know that any sort of therapy and medication, it's going to take 4 to 6 weeks. You might go through ups and downs, peaks and valleys where you're feeling good and when you're not. And so just paying attention to all those things and practice what gives you joy. Take care of yourself first. You have to love yourself first before others can love you. And then it starts to exude out of you and people are attracted to that, right? You win more. What is the saying? You attract more bees with honey than you do with vinegar. And
Yes.
so, yeah, what you put out into the universe, I'm a firm believer, is what comes back into you. And it's just daily practice and it's daily reminders and practice affirmations, give back to yourself, take care.
Yeah, that's all good advice. Okay, the next thing we're going to take a break. When I come back, I want to talk about your side hustle, and the joy it's bringing you. We'll be back. We're
Yes.
talking with Ashley Fullmer. We are finishing up a conversation with Ashley Fullmer. Ashley, you have given great advice, and thanks for being so transparent about your story. What I want to talk about now is your side hustle. You and I have talked off camera over the months for a long time about side hustles, and a lot of people in the corporate world, your friends and colleagues, have a little something on the side for that creative part of your personality that you don't get to necessarily utilize in a corporate setting. So talk about the idea, how it came to you, and how far it's come in a very short period of time.
Yeah. So, ironically, the first day that I went on my leave, I shot out of bed, 7 in the morning. I have this idea. I'm going to do it. I'm going to start this entrepreneurship side hustle. And I'm going to take something that I love. I've always been fascinated by glass, wood, the shape of them. How can I upcycle this material and make it into home decor functional products? So that's what I did. I take wine bottles, growlers, liquor bottles, pallets of wood and turn them into art. And so I like to say, I'm tech corporate, the science by week, and I'm crafts, homemade goods, the art by the weekend. And you're right, it's the creative outlet that I needed so I can use both sides of my brain. I've always wanted to do something in the arts. And hope to do something as like a second retirement post corporate life, turning it into revenue based. But that's not really the reason why I did it. The reason why I did it is I was looking for something that gave me joy. I was looking for a hobby that, of course, could turn into revenue and profit, but taking that artistic skill set and trying to do something with it. And what was even more surprising is throughout this process of making things and establishing a business and using that entrepreneur skill set, I identified a couple of things. One, I can do it, right? So it gave me the confidence, it gave my self-worth back. Like, I can do this. I had the idea on March 7th. I had my first market on April 16th. And here we are in September. I'm wrapping out the market season. So I'm within kind of that first 6-month window, and I'm learning a lot and I'm having a lot of fun with it. So the second thing is it gives me a great social outlet. I'm having a community around all these other vendors. I'm learning from them. We're sharing our craft. We're sharing our pride around it. And it's been really, really rewarding.
When we should also mention that a lot of the furniture in your home, you just bought your home a couple of years ago, you and your dad and your mom's very crafty too, and your dad does woodworking. So you even built your dining room table together and some other accent tables and things like that. So it was something that you had some knowledge about, but most definitely you hadn't been doing it to this degree. Both our moms are pretty crafty. So it's in us to utilize those kind of skill sets. But definitely showing some of your work here. What is your favorite thing that you do? We have just a couple minutes left. So what is, of the things that you're offering, I'll get pictures from you or you post them on social media, you and your mom and I, and we all have a chat that's been going a couple years now in text, but you share a paint day. So you're painting all the bottles and you're doing all the things. And what is your favorite part of the work you're doing?
Just the openness to create, and trial and error. I mean, I'll be humble in the fact that not everything turns out, but working with the palettes creates a lot of beautiful things that when looking at a palette, I never would have seen it before. I'm moving more into like spray painting and the paint design of things. So I think I just like the openness. There's no construct other than what I want to do with it. So it's really powerful. But it's gritty. I'm out in the backyard spraying. My lawn is red, blue, orange, and yellow right now. My home has turned into a workshop, but it's fun. And I'm really glad that you brought up family. My business is called Fullmer Innovations, and it very much is family ingrained. Yes, my dad has built desks, the shelf behind me, other projects within the home, my dining room table. My mom is super creative, and I find myself pulling from her. I truly am like pulling in both sides of my parents. My dad had an LLC, learning from him. So it's been really fun to incorporate that family aspect, the creative outlet, and really just having fun with something.
And I think going to the markets too, and you post pictures about that, seeing all the different creative people being booth by booth with these creative people, and then, getting to share ideas. I think it's really, we can be creative in all kinds of ways, right? We can do all kinds of, find any way we want to be creative, and to have found it your first go out, right? You could have tried that out and thought, oh, that didn't work. And obviously you're going to learn as you go with some of the products you've tried to create. What you think in your mind doesn't necessarily work when you put it to reality. But I'm just proud of you. I love all the work you're doing. We're signing off now, but I'd like to have you back, and to talk about the progress you've made and what you've learned from others, because I know a lot of people are coming to you with their stories after you've been so open with yours. So thanks for being here today, and I wish you the very best.